Yes, everybody, welcome back to Football United TV. I'm here with Marlie, and this is a tribute podcast show on the late, the great Pele. Here comes the intro. Greetings, everybody. Welcome back to Football United TV. This is the podcast where we pay tribute to the late, great Pele. And I'm joined by Marlie today. Marlie, how are you doing, bro?
Doing well, mate. Doing well. It's been a couple of days. I was in a really bad place for a good 2 or 3 days after he passed away. Like I'll get into it a little later on. But yeah, man, I just thought I'd pop my head back in and just say a couple of things about Pele because I don't know, like in Brazil, he's pretty much everyone's favorite player in a way. Like, of course, a lot of us haven't seen him live. As I was mentioning beforehand, like, I think he stopped playing like almost 20 years before I was born. But still, like, you're taught football through Pele in Brazil. That's what happened. That's what happens. Like, it's not just like here's football. No, here's what Pele did, and here's why you should love football. And yeah, so I thought I'd say a couple of things, and it's always good to be back. I would much rather do this as a tribute if he was turning 90 or something in a couple of years down the road, but like that's life. That's life.
It is life is a death is a part of life, unfortunately, and it's just nice to see so much support around the world for his
Absolutely.
family and loved ones, and especially the people of Brazil. Also, loads of tributes coming in. So look, Edson Arantes do Nascimento, born 23rd of October 1940, died unfortunately 29th of December 2022, known mononymously by his nickname Pele, was a Brazilian professional footballer who played as a forward, regarded as one of the greatest players of all time and labelled the greatest by FIFA. He was among the most successful and popular sports figures of the 20th century. In 1999, he was named Athlete of the Century by the International Olympic Committee and was included in the Times list of the
Even
100.
though he's never played an Olympic game, like he's
Exactly. That just shows you everything, doesn't it? But he was in the Times list of 100 most important people of the 20th century. And in 2000, Pele was voted World Player of the Century by the International Federation of Football History and Statistics and was one of the two joint winners of the FIFA Player of the Century. His 1,279 goals in 1,363 games, which includes friendlies, are recognised as a Guinness World Record, a record that no other player has set. What do you say to that, Marley? I mean, that just tells you everything, like you just said. Like, you just need to know what he's actually done in his career to
yeah.
stand up and applaud him.
Yeah, man, Pele, like it's crazy. Like we don't have enough time to talk about everything Pele's done. Like just you just mentioned that like he scored nearly 1,300 goals. And yes, there were a lot of friendlies involved, but then again, back then you played less matches, so they played a lot of friendlies, and like mainly Pele played a lot of friendlies because he was that player. Like people wanted to watch Pele,
Well, yeah.
so he
To
went.
cut in, Marley, I think a lot of the friendlies were when Santos went on tour around the world and
Exactly,
around Europe, right?
exactly,
They were playing AC Milans, they were playing Real Madrids, they were showcasing Brazilian talent.
exactly, exactly. Mate, Pele, like he's the biggest figure we've ever had in football, and it's gonna be hard to compete with him. We have some crazy young talents there. Mbappe is most likely gonna retire with amazing international numbers that might even compare to Pele's, but just what he did, like everything your favorite player's done that impressed you, Pele probably did it beforehand.
Yeah,
Like these videos are getting really popular where you just see Pele's done it first. Cause he did. Like he was unstoppable. And a lot of people say that nowadays he wouldn't score over 1,000 goals. I agree with that. I feel like he'd probably come closer to 2,000. It's like if he was born nowadays with the difference we have, like you see people like evolving athletically, right? Like he would be even more athletic nowadays. Like he'd have the preparation. Dude, look at the material people played with back then. Imagine him playing with like good technology ball. Like he'd be nuts. And he was like, I feel like people don't know enough about like what he represented outside of the pitch as well, because a lot of people talk about Muhammad Ali, for example, like another one of the greatest athletes of all time, that's done loads outside of the sport as well. And Pele was that dude. Like I honestly feel like this is the coolest thing about him and about an athlete ever. He stopped a war. Like in I think it was 1969 in Nigeria, that there was a civil war happening because of some separatist thing. Like I don't know enough about geopolitics about to talk about that, but there was a ceasefire just to watch Pele Santos play.
yeah,
Like
I remember.
he
Yeah,
stopped wars. Like he had that power. It's There's probably videos of that with subtitles on, but after he scored his 1,000th goal against Vasco da Gama, which by the way, just a quick PS, Vasco was a huge team in Brazil and in the world as well. Vasco was huge, and their biggest player passed away today, Roberto Dinamite, another huge Brazilian legend. Roberto Dynamite. He holds a couple of records of like, goal scoring records in Brazil, like in the league. Like he was phenomenal back in the '80s. Played for the national team as well, and sadly he passed away. But once he scored his 1,000th goal, like the first thing that happened when someone put a mic in his face for him to say something, he was crying his eyes out, saying, "Let's help the little kids. Let's help those in need. Like people are suffering, they need our help." Which like nowadays it's common for athletes to be involved, but back then it wasn't as much. Like it was before the internet where everyone had to be involved. Like nowadays you're kind of an asshole if you don't do anything, if you don't say anything, rightfully so, because if you're a public figure you should be bringing up the problems that we have in the world and should be trying to help, do your part in that, like bring people's consciousness to that.
yeah,
And Pele started doing that in the 60s, man, in the 50s. And yeah, he was, and everyone that's met Pele says that he was fantastic. Actually, my old man actually met Pele in a hotel in the northeast of Brazil, some beautiful beach places. And the way my father was, like he he had very little shame in him. He pretended to know Pele. He pretty much just said, "Yo, what's up, my guy?" That's what he's like. He tapped him in the shoulder, said, "Hey, yo, what's up, dude?" And because of the way Pele was, like he didn't want to feel awkward or anything. He just went with it. He was like, "Yo, long time no see. How are you?" Because he was lovely, man. He was one of those first ones to stop and talk to every single person. He looked people in the eye. Like he was a wonderful human being, and that was like a lot of kindness, like just a lot of good within, like attached to the greatest footballer ever. Like he's the reason why Brazil is the country of football and why football is the main sport in Brazil. Like he's brought soccer to the US. Like it was him. Like he's the reason why it's like now, of course, like it's beginning to gain more and more pace, obviously, but he began that movement. Like he brought it to the spotlight. He's he's just immense. Like we, of course, he wasn't playing anymore, and I say we lost the biggest legend. Not really. Like Edson died, Pele, like he's immortal. We're always going to be talking about what he's done in and outside the field, but it was definitely a sad day, man. It was definitely a day.
Apparently, I saw an interview where he actually said that he didn't actually like being called Pele. You hear that?
In the beginning, yeah, like I don't know. It was probably like a regional nickname. I don't know what it means actually, but yeah, in the big like he people started calling him Pele when he moved somewhere with his family, and like the new people he met called him Pele, but eventually like he liked it. It's the nickname that brought him to fame. But it's in Brazil, like that was always a joke because he usually referred to him in the like he didn't say I, he said Pele or Edson because he had like both personalities, right? Like you had the person and you had the football player.
Yeah, yeah,
What a character, man! Like he was a character. He acted in a couple of movies as well.
yeah.
He was, yeah, just with
Amazing.
Stallone and Michael Caine.
Oh yeah, I saw that. Yeah, the Great Escape. Yeah,
Yes, yes,
brilliant film. And he scored. Apparently, I got a good story about that. So the scene where he scores the overhead kick was one take.
of course it was. Why wouldn't it be?
It's so magical. Oh my god, the way that they filmed it and everything, you think they've probably taken about 50 takes to get this right. And it's like, no, apparently on the first time, he did that on the first time, which just shows how amazing he is. I'm going to read out a couple of comments. I'm going to ask you a question about him, Marley. Football versus cancer, which is talk. Big up, mate. He says Pele was and will remain the biggest and most adored icon in the history of football. Completely agree, mate. Anthony Herbert says, big up, lads. Rest in peace, Pele. What a legend and a great inspiration to fans on and off the pitch. His legacy will live on.
Absolutely, cousin.
So I heard today a few people saying actually about Pele and comparisons to players today. And I heard something that was really interesting and I really agree with it. Someone said, if you wanted to get Messi and Ronaldo, a player that had both their attributes, it was Pele. He was both of them put together. That's how incredible he was. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think I heard a different version of that where you added more players to that list. But yes, like he was, there wasn't like a lot of people are saying this as well, journalists that followed his career and like throughout. It's really hard for there to be another Pele because every like a lot of players are near perfect, but he was perfect. Like there wasn't a flaw to his game. Nothing. Like he could do everything a lot better than everyone else. And you're talking about a time where you had some ballers, by the way. Like a lot of the best players in history played with Pele. Like he's played with Beckenbauer. He's played with Carlos Alberto Torres, who's another one of the best defenders ever. He's played with Rivelino, another amazing winger as well. But Garrincha, like for most in Brazil, the second best Brazilian player ever. Like, but everyone looked lesser in everything. Like he wasn't too tall, but he jumped higher than everyone else. Like that's probably where you see some of the Cristiano Ronaldo things because like he was one of the first players who, like you saw him like a meter taller than everyone
Yeah.
else when he was jumping. It was nuts. He kicked the ball perfectly with both feet. He has amazing like you don't even pay attention to the amount of assists he got because look at the amount of goals he scored. But dude, like he was amazing assisting as well. And I'd argue that the most iconic assist in World Cup history was his in the fourth goal against Italy, where he just put in the ball for Carlos Alberto Torres to score the fourth goal.
Yeah.
God, God, like we called him the king, but he was the god of football. He
What
is.
What about the
Exactly.
miss, Marley? The famous miss.
You have
Don't
two.
give us one. Yeah, go on. Give us both of them. Then go on. What ones were they for
Yeah.
you?
Well, like he attempted to score from the halfway point, right? Like from the, how do you call that? The middle line? Like what? No. Sorry.
Centre circle.
Yeah, like he tried to score from his own court, right? Like from Brazil's defensive court.
Right.
I can't remember right now who he was against, but that was back in the 1970 World Cup, and the other miss was in that World Cup as well. But he almost got it right. Like it was now a lot of people attempt that. Like people are always keeping their eye on the goalkeeper because if he's not like defending his goal properly, they're gonna try. You've seen some amazing goals done that way, but like his was the first famous attempt, right? Like people didn't pay attention. Like those geniuses back then, like that hadn't been thought of. Like he was the first one to think about that. And the second one was a pass that he just like forgot about the ball, right? Like he just let the ball go through and he dribbled the goalkeeper that way. And when he shot it like slightly wide. It was a shame because those are known as the two goals that Pele never scored. Because other than that, like he scored pretty much everything. And those
I've actually I've actually got a third one to put in there. It was against England where he missed and he should have scored. He rose up really high for a header and Gordon
yes,
Banks clawed it off the line. So that I put that in there as well.
it's another thing. Like, but by the way, great goalkeeper, but like he's a lot more famous because of Pele, because of that save, because that's the greatest save in World Cup history. I'm sure
Pele
there's
said he
other
was
like
the best goalkeeper he ever faced. So it obviously made him a bit more famous, didn't it? You know.
exactly. That like there's been like a bunch of other really cool saves, but that's the most emblematic one for sure. And yeah, man, like I begin to like I don't know, like I could go on and on. Like he's just it's tough. Like it was an emotional day for me, and I'm sure it was the very same way for a lot of Brazilians because I like the beginning of my football knowledge came with my old man talking about Pele. Of course, it was his favorite player. Like he was sort of a Santos fan because of Pele, because he actually watched it. Like my father was 8 when Brazil won the World Cup for the first time, and Pele was 17. By the way, he was the best player in that World Cup already, and he followed his career like from the start to the end. So like it was really rare for me to have a football conversation with my father where where he wouldn't bring up Pele. It was really rare because
Was it did it make Santos having a player like Pele, or was Santos already an established club, or did it really put them on the world map because of Pele and what he brought to world football and the art
no,
that?
it was definitely Pele. I'm sure they would have been great if Pele played somewhere else as well because the pool of talent in Santos is amazing. They've always had a lot of young talent coming from there. You have Neymar, Robinho, like you have a lot of really talented players. But Pele is definitely like he definitely brought Santos to the spotlight, turned Santos into arguably the biggest team in Brazil, even though their fan base is a lot smaller than the likes of Corinthians, Flamengo. But like it's where Pele played, so it's a team that everyone loves. And because of that, a lot of people wanted to play in Santos. So like young talent's always gonna want to play where Pele played, and then like you have other legends that build on that. Like now people want to play where Neymar played. And by the way, like sure a lot of people know this already, maybe because of the fact that he passed away and people started talking about that, or from beforehand. But he made the number 10. It was just a number before Pele. It was just a number. Like it meant nothing. Then after Pele, that's what Maradona wore. That's what wore. Sorry,
Messi.
that's what Messi wore. That Ronaldinho wanted to wear that one. So he made that number important. It's the number where like usually your best player is gonna wear the number 10. Your most talented player, usually it's an attacking player, even though you have some weird defensive cases. I'm an Arsenal fan, so I remember I think it was Gallas, right? That wore the number 10. Weird.
Yeah,
Uh but he made it. And Neymar, I don't usually like what Neymar says. Like I prefer him like playing football, but his homage to Pele was beautiful, and he built on that affirmation that before Pele, the number 10 was just a number, and he said that before Pele, football was just a sport, like because Pele brought that entertainment part of it. Like I can't guarantee, like I can't like know for sure that football wouldn't be the most popular sport in the world if it wasn't for Pele. I think it would. It's the greatest sport in the world, so why wouldn't it? But it definitely grew because of Edson Arantes do Nascimento. He was ah just the biggest genius, man. Like he was fantastic. You can't say enough about Pele.
I agree with Matt as well. A trailblazer, greatest of all time,
Exactly.
pioneer. Big up to Matt, evening all, he says. Big up everyone on the show and in the chat. Smash the like, share, subscribe if you can, please. Put your comments in if you have anything to say on the late, great Pele. Anthony's put a comment here. It's about the film The Great Escape. In an interview, Sylvester Stallone said he was warming up before a take. He was shooting past Stallone in a goal, and Stallone broke two of his fingers trying to save Pele's shot.
I have no idea if that's true. Sylvester Stallone's always been a huge guy as well, but it could make sense. Like he was a strong man, Pele. He was definitely beyond his years athletically. Like he was one. Like you see a couple of those nowadays as well, like where they seem to be another breed, right? Like the two new specimen now are Mbappe and Holland. Like it doesn't seem like they're quite human. Pele was definitely there that back then, but you could argue that he'd be that for a good 30 years after him as well. Like he was that athletic. Like he was just dominant.
He was an inspiration to so many. And I mean, you look at players now like Neymar and certain other players that are coming through in the Brazil squad. What do you think? I mean, Pele would have thought of the Brazilian squad, obviously having the World Cup just a week or two before he died, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, how great would it have been if Brazil won the World Cup? Like people are bringing that up a lot.
I know for that. That's what
Uh
I'm saying. What do you think he thought of the team? I'm not saying that you know personally, of
yeah.
course, you don't,
hmm
but
It's tough to say, man, because Pele's always been like some would say overly positive. Like it was, he'd bring up injustice in the world overall, but like he'd always try to stay, like try not to get in the way of football, right? So or the national team. So it was really rare for Pele to actually talk ill about any player. I'm sure that if you were having an honest conversation with Pele about the team we had now, like I'm sure he'd have some problems with a couple of players. I I I feel like we had a good starting 11 there, with a couple of exceptions that weren't necessarily the manager's fault, just because we don't have some good players in a couple of positions. But I'm sure Pele's not a fan of Fred's, for example. I don't think I don't think that's what he pictured when he made the seleção the biggest team in the world, right? Like when the biggest thing you could do is wear the Brazilian national team shirt. Like I'm sure he wasn't thinking about the likes of Fred or who else, Rafinha, even like a couple of those. Like they're not up to the task. They're not up to this task that you see in front of you, like right there with 3 World Cups.
mm.
It's yeah, they're
And he
they're
used to
far
get,
away from his level.
I
Mm?
mean, Marley, it was a different game back then. He used to get, kicked up and down the pitch. You know what I mean? Like it was different from referees them days. It wasn't like the yellow cards coming out for those sort of tackles. And literally, I think in '66, wasn't it, in England World Cup? I believe he pretty much got kicked out of that tournament, didn't he? It's
Yeah.
unfortunate because you probably could have won that if he'd not have been treated so badly by the opposition.
He probably would have, because like Pele, like that's the one exception, right? Like in '62, he played like one or two games before getting injured as well, and Gahincha took over and won that for us. But healthy, Pele never lost a World Cup, so it's tough to imagine that Brazil, like even like think about the fact that we won '58, we won '62, and we won again in '70. So it's Brazil is definitely one of the favorites in '66. I'm sure he would have made some noise if he wasn't hunted the way he was, and that's always been like you can't really blame defenders. What are you gonna do? Dude, if I'm a defender and I'm playing against Pele, like I'm gonna try my very best not to injure the best player out there, but I'm beating the crap out of him. Like there's no way to stop him. Like what are you gonna do? You can't just let him go past you every single time because that's what he would have done. So
Unfortunately, yeah, you just give him a good kick. Unfortunately,
yeah, man. Like you mainly like fair play wasn't as big a thing back then as it is today as well. So people didn't care, man. I'm imagining that Europeans, Uruguayans, Argentinians beat the crap out of him. Like it was probably scary to watch a football game where Pele was playing if you're his family or something because it was definitely he was definitely hunted. But and like that's another thing where Brazil at some point in history, like we started having not just a reputation, but a culture of people diving and faking injuries and all of that. Like Brazil, like we're the pioneer when it comes to that, and I don't know why, I don't know where it began. It definitely didn't begin with him. Like Pele was one of those, like he didn't complain, like he just
carried
got
on.
up and did his thing. Exactly, carried on, and that's another thing that people like. He never complained about anything in the national team as either. Nowadays, like they stay in the most expensive hotels, like they're superstars, right? It wasn't the case back then, dude. The Brazilian Football Federation had no money whatsoever. They stayed in cheap hotels when they went to World Cups back in the day. And there's a bunch of these stories where like the food was absolutely inedible, but still Pele ate it and didn't say a word about it. Like he just grabbed this steak that looked like a freaking stone because it was so tough. He just cut it into little pieces so that it was chewable. Like he was that character. Like he was the biggest star, yet he had no star behavior whatsoever. The all the stardom he used it to help people outside. Like he never used it to his benefit. Like by the way, like he came back to football and played in the US because he was absolutely broke. He wasn't a genius when it came to investment. Like he made a couple of really bad ones, lost all his money. Football wasn't as rich then as it is now, very far away from it. And the Cosmos gave him a contract where he was the he had like the biggest sports salary in the world for like 1 or 2 years. That's what like saved his life afterwards because after like he would have been broke if it wasn't for that. But he just even though like he wasn't as wealthy as a lot of these football players are nowadays, and I know a lot of them do a lot of things for their community, but Pele always did it. Like he's one of the
Even when he had,
incentives for that.
yeah, even when he had nothing, he'd still be.
Exactly.
That's the thing. It's not like he had a lot of money and was like, right, I'll do this because I've got a lot of money and I've got a high status. He had to literally give a lot of his own time and money probably just to help people out. You know, it's not like he was
Yeah.
just giving a little percentage of his wages away. He's probably giving a lot of it away just to try and help people out.
Yeah.
Got some comments here. Big up, big up Talk MU, big up in the house. He says,
There you
yo,
go, mate.
folks.
Love you.
Big up Marlie. Matt says, everything we laud the greats for Pele did it before. 100% agree with that. Hey, Talk, you good? Anthony says, yeah, it's true. Stallone said it in an interview. Well, if Stallone said it, and it's his own fingers to be breaking, so you ain't going to really lie about that, are you?
Yeah.
Hi, Matthew. Big up, bro. Yo, talk or you talk. Imagine Pele in today's game with all the advantages today's players have. Yeah, what
Dude.
do you make of that, Marley, man?
Dude, honestly, man, like I know, dude, Messi's the best player I've ever seen, right? Like I never watched anyone live like nowadays, like currently playing nearly as good as Messi. I feel like he's a lot better than Ronaldo as well. Like he's a genius. But you look at Messi and you look at Pele. Pele was so much more impressive. Like if Pele was playing today, like these numbers that Messi and Ronaldo laid with like 40 goals a season for like a good 10 years or so, dude, Pele would probably score an average of 60, 70 goals a season. Like he definitely wouldn't play in Brazil. It wouldn't be like today. Like he'd go to Europe at 18 and tear it apart like
But
15 years plus.
that's a good question from me then. Do you think if he'd have had another chance, he would have gone to a club in Europe, seeing as he didn't really make that move?
That's just because like that was a really rare move to happen back in the day. And
Could you imagine him playing at like Real Madrid or I
I
don't know?
think that's probably what would have happened. Like
Mm.
he would have gone to, well, depending when, right, like right now, Real Madrid and Barcelona are the two that make the most sense. But he could have come to England as well. Like he could have gone to the Serie A. Like he would, back in the day, like that didn't happen. Like international, well, like going from one continent to the other was rare back in the day. I think back then a couple of Europeans played in Brazil as well. Like there was enough money involved in football compared to Europe in Brazil, so that like the best team in the world when Pele played was Santos. Starting with him, right, and that attracted other great players from Brazil to go there.
But they were
And
amazing teammate. They were literally smashing the European teams up.
yeah,
Didn't
yeah,
expect to do it, and people were like, "Oh my god, who is this team?" And obviously Pele was involved with that, and they were like, "They're beating AC Milan's, they're beating Madrid's."
exactly.
I'm not sure. I think they might have even played some teams in England
They
back
probably
in the
did.
day.
They probably did. Yeah, at least in friendlies. I'm assuming they did. And that movement where players started going to Europe, I think that was back in the '80s where that began, where you had Zico go to Italy, where you had, I think, Falcone went to Italy as well. I think it began with Italy. And then in the '90s, Spain got involved as well, and then like now, none of our good players stayed in Brazil. Which then again, fair play. Back in the day, it wasn't the case. So he definitely he'd have an European career. Like he'd go to Europe at 18, probably retire there or come back to Brazil at like 38 or something because he was that athletic. Like he could play for years and years. Nowadays, with how things are more evolved as well, more advanced, there'd be no stopping Pele.
And I completely agree. He's going to be
Yeah.
dearly missed. Talks in the house. Yo, cuz, big up. I'm good, Matthew. Hope you're well. All good here. Thanks from Anthony from Matt Bassett. Smash the like, share, subscribe if you can, please, everybody. To players like Pele and Messi, the ball is a part of them. Says Talk MU, agreeing with that.
Yeah,
Marley.
yeah. Pele always said like you gotta treat the ball as your spouse, right? Like as your significant other. So he loved the ball absolutely, and I can tell you for sure the ball loved him more than it loved anyone else in history. Yeah, man, it's true. It's true.
Matt Bassett says he saw rumors recently that Barcelona tried to sign Pele in the 60s. That sounds.
Wow, I never heard about that, but that makes sense. If he had come to Europe, if he had gone, sorry, I'm not in Europe. If he had gone to Europe back in the day, I mean, things would have been different. Maybe Brazilian football, like Santos, wouldn't have been as big as it is now. But I feel like he would be more unanimous because a lot, like a big reason why he's not unanimous. Like a lot of people talk about Maradona, or now we're beginning to talk about Messi as well, even Di Stefano, some other players, because he didn't play in Europe. And it's people forget the fact that football wasn't always as centered as it is nowadays.
I do love that
So
picture. I'm sorry, Marley. I just wanted to throw that up.
yeah, it's one of the best ones. Mate, that smile, man, like he was contagious.
It's this bald guy here holding him. He looks very proud to be holding his left thigh on top of his shoulder there.
dude, dude, who wouldn't be? You're holding one of the best instruments ever used in football. And yeah, man, it means too much, man, because that's the thing. Like Brazil as a nation, I don't want to sound like superficial when I say that, but football is really important in Brazil. It's I heard this journalist saying this, and I loved it. Like it's the best way we express ourselves. So Pele was literally like the best Brazilian ever to express himself, like through football. We have that culture. I'm not a good representation of that because I suck at dancing and I suck at playing as well. But we express ourselves through dancing and playing football. It's always been I don't it wasn't always the case, but ever since Pele, that was the case. And so like it just the what he means, like you can't put it in words, you can't measure it because it's just too huge, too huge. It's yeah, he just he made it. He made us. He made us. He really did. Like he added to our identity,
He put
and
Brazil on the
we
map,
just got to
didn't
be
he?
so thankful.
Matt says South American football was much better back in that period of time, hence why they didn't really make the move to European football.
Exactly, exactly. Like every single one of Brazil's best player back in the day, like they were in Brazil. They were in Brazil. Like the best defender of all time in Brazil, Carlos Alberto Torres. He was playing in Santos as well. Played in Fluminense beforehand, but played in Santos. Rivelino never left. Like that began in the 80s.
He also says who was the closest player to Pele in that period of time Pele played. I'd say Garrincha. I'd say I don't know.
Garrincha, Garrincha was a lot older than Pele, so they didn't play together for a long time. But as a Brazilian, I'd say Garrincha was the best player that ever shared the pitch with Pele for sure. But you've had some greats. Beckenbauer is another one, like arguably the best defensive player of all time. Like he played with Pele as well. He was a little younger. But you have a lot of huge players, man. I know he's not regarded as
Eusebio.
one of the best ever, but the guy, hmm? Eusebio, second best Portuguese player now of all time, but still like huge, huge talent. You have well, he's not that significant, but he's the highest scorer in one edition of the World Cup, right? Fontaine, 58. So you have a lot of talent, man. You have a lot of talent. Just in that Brazil 1970s team, like you can handpick and sorry, you can take your pick. Like they were all greats. Rivelino, who played in 1970, he's regarded as not necessarily the biggest, but he's the best player in the history of two of the biggest teams in Brazil, both Fluminense and Corinthians. He was a legend as well, one of the best players to ever play the game. But he was nothing next to Pele. Like people barely noticed him.
Exactly. I think that's about it then, mate. We've
Yeah.
literally took some really good stuff there. I guess maybe to finish it off, Marley, you might want to just say one more piece about Pele and how we go on from here and how the country are taking it, and then what's going to happen in the future for Brazil. Like, is there going to be like a special day that you celebrate every year, a Pele Day, or is there going to be a bank holiday? Like, is there anything in place for the future to remember such a player and such a figure for the country?
I mean, immediately you had a lot of movement where you're gonna see Pele a lot in like streets named after him, places, just areas named after Pele as well. I'm not sure national holiday. Like I'm gonna be honest here. Like we can't afford to have another holiday. We have a lot of those in Brazil already. People need to work, but it would have been more than fair. It would have been more than fair because like I probably say, man, like Pele is the biggest Brazilian of all time. He is. Like we have some solid writers in Brazil's history, like solid ones, amazing musicians. Tom Jobim comes to mind, but
Gal
no
Costa.
one was Gal Costa. Like we have some legendary people, but Pele, he's the biggest Brazilian of all time, biggest one. So you're gonna see a lot of that. Like pretty much every big city in Brazil is definitely gonna have a Pele street somewhere. I think in Rio is gonna be close to Maracanã, who was like that was kind of like his second home. Like he played a lot in Maracanã because people wanted to watch Pele, and that was the biggest stadium back there. Back then, it still is in Brazil. But there was conversations about retiring the shirt in Santos, but the president said he would do it, and the day after he kind of like backed up on that. But I kind of agree with not retiring it though. I feel like you should probably get a break from the number 10 just because right now like I don't feel like people are going to be comfortable seeing someone wear the number 10 because like Santos doesn't have good players like that can play in that position that are going to be amazing enough. But I feel like it's a waste to retire that shirt. I know like it's not. I don't mean any disrespect. Okay, I'm a huge basketball fan, but it's not like the NBA where you don't have a limit, right? Like it's usually you're always gonna have from 1 to 11. You have those set numbers there, and the Santos number 10 shirt. It's the most iconic shirt in Brazil. It's the most iconic thing you can wear, unless you're talking about the national team.
Yeah.
So I feel like it should live on. It should live on for when they have like big enough players. Now they should probably like avoid giving it to anyone more than before. Like it should definitely be a shirt that's only given to someone that's like possibly legendary status. But I wouldn't retire it. So I agree with the president. Plus, it was Pele's request that the shirt was never retired. That's what he. And man, to finish this, I think I just want to say thank you once again. I It's a very small homage that I can pay. Like I wish I could do more for the guy that literally brought some of our identity to us. And I just want to say thank you for everything he's done. I Football's my favorite sport. It's one of my biggest passions in life. I'm very passionate about this, about the sport. You guys know this that I'm a huge fan, and he's the reason why that's so like it's so frequent that you have Brazilians loving the game so much. Like he was the biggest gift that we got in form of a man, like in the history of our country. Really, he made part of the sport that's so loved, that's so cool, that people love so much, that people are so passionate about. Like he's the first and like the original, and and he's always going to be the god of football. So I just want to say thank you, obrigado, hey, thank you, King, and rest in peace. I hope there's gonna be some killer football games up in heaven with the people having gone like lately. So it's gonna kick the ball around with Maradona. Like they're gonna have a blast. Carlos Alberto that I mentioned a couple of times here as well.
Just want to add as well, obviously, Gianluca Vialli died
Viali, of
a few
course.
days ago, so he'll be joining them too. And he was another one of those players, mate, who was very humble and very giving,
Yeah.
especially for him coming from a rich background. He gave a lot, and you could probably say for people like Pele, made these sorts of players. Even
Yeah.
Vialli, I can guarantee you would be like, I looked up to Pele, so I can only
And by
imagine.
the way, like I didn't want to. I didn't feel like didn't feel like talking about this aspect of it too much, just because you have like me and Maddie here, like it's not necessarily our place. But Pele was huge, huge when it came to Black empowerment as well. And I saw this really cool interview of Ian Wright saying like Pele's the reason why he loves football, because he saw like back in the day, like you still have a lot of oppression nowadays. You still have so many problems, racism still very much so a huge issue in our society, but it was more back then, right? Like, and he just saw black men being the absolute best at what he did, like being a boss, and like that inspired him, and it inspired a lot of people. Like his fight against racism was huge, and I just thought I should mention it. And that's yet another thing where I say thank you, not only for being the best player of all time, but also for being so important, for using your voice so well, always trying to help those in need, always trying to bring equality and peace to everywhere, and literally bringing peace to a place that was at war at one point. So thank you, obrigado, hey. There's never gonna be anyone that comes close to you. That's it.
Well said, mate. Good way to end it off. Obrigado, Pele. One of the greatest of all times. And I'm from England as well. And I know there's people from my island and all over the world that appreciate and share that same sentiment. We're going to finish off now, Marlie. Thank you, mate, for doing this. It's very good to do this with you, mate, obviously, because you're in Rio right now. You've been amongst the fans and how they're feeling, etc. So thank you for coming by, bro. Where can everybody find you, mate?
Right. So, by the way, first of all, it was a privilege. So I should be the one thanking you. Oh, you can find me here every now and then. I'm hoping that I can be like a smaller part of the channel than I was back back in back in the days, but still like making an appearance every now and then. I haven't been messing with Twitter too much, so I'm not even gonna bring that up. If you want to follow me on Instagram, you can. I'll follow you back, and I'll appreciate the support. Trying to make it as an actor here in Brazil. It's at Charlie Millen 93. That's my Instagram. That's it. And please support this lovely channel that has like the nicest and best host out there.
Oh, cheers, mate. Thank you for that, bro. Thank you so much, mate. Brilliant job for coming on. And yes, Marlie, hopefully we'll be coming back every now and then. So do keep tuned in. Smash the like, share, stuttering there. Smash the like, share, subscribe if you can. And we will see you hopefully in the week. I'm off to the Canary Islands on Saturday. So I'm going to do a few vlogs under a few palm trees, maybe a transfer show, etc. But we'll see when we get there, because this is what this channel is all about. We'll decide when we want to do shows and what we want to do to make it more authentic and real instead of made up and rehearsed. So tune in next week, or in the week, sorry, and take care, everybody. Have a brilliant rest of your Sunday. Bye-bye.
Ciao.